got nation states potentially buying hash rates at an all-time highs. I know that the UAE are mining Bitcoin with their renewable energy, and you couldn't get more bullish news globally. We've got the experience, the capabilities of understanding the market really well. They were the first ever blockchain company to IPO. We will see 1 to 3 to 5% of that money that should have gone into gold go into Bitcoin. So if we can see these companies be successful as Bitcoin treasury companies, then I think a lot more people will go public. I've said that the UK is an election cycle behind the US. So we have 4 years. So we're essentially 2020-ish kind of where the US were. So all these idiotic policies that they're doing are going to make the issues and situations worse in the UK, more money leaving the country. So again, why they don't like Bitcoin is Bitcoin, I can get up and just leave. The FCA don't really understand Bitcoin, crypto, they don't understand the ecosystem, and it should get to a point where they're like, we need to hire expert. I guess the bullish news is you're comfortably over 100,000, which would have been a dream whenever, 5-10 years ago.
Before we get started in all the topics, maybe give us some small intro of like who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
So my name is James Van Straten. I'm the senior analyst at CoinDesk, and I also advise a public company in the United Kingdom on their Bitcoin treasury strategy called Coincilium. So I've been in the Bitcoin space since 2017. I got in. I will remember it very vividly in December. I bought the top at $20,000, and then did my learnings through the bear market of 2018. Became quite involved in the space, and then COVID came and it changed my worldview on pretty much everything. So at $3,000, I'm sitting there. Financial markets have imploded. I'm pretty much all in at this point, other than my deposit for my house that I wanted to buy in London, and that completely went into Bitcoin. So that was probably one of the best trades I'll ever do. But for me, COVID was a symbolism of a two-tiered market system. Of one, how you can shut down the entire global economy, and financial markets are soaring to all-time highs. To me, that made no sense. It was the huge distortion of the elites versus everyone else. And then the trust with institutions went to all-time lows. So I think all of that kind of increased my bullishness on Bitcoin as an asset that no one can control, and every other characteristic of it as well. And then the holy grail, for my understanding of Bitcoin from 2017, 2018, was the ETFs. And when the ETFs got launched, I was extremely bullish on them as well. And yeah, I haven't been proved wrong. They were the most successful ETF launch of all time. And the US have really powered on and become a huge global Bitcoin crypto hub now, which is great to see. But the UK, where I live, is just languishing so far behind. And I'm sure we'll go into the details of it.
Absolutely. It's interesting how UK and Europe in general is kind of lagging behind. But it's interesting. COVID was, for a lot of people, also for me, a huge wake-up point. Turns out if you lock people inside, they actually ask the question why and really ask more questions than others might want to have. Maybe let's get into Bitcoin treasury companies. How do you see the development of institutional adoption in Bitcoin, but also like the contrast between US and UK and Europe in general?
So I can start on the story of the Bitcoin treasury company. So in August 2020, obviously MicroStrategy started their journey, $1 billion market cap. I heard of Michael Saylor in the 2000 tech boom that he took his company down 95%. So when he got into Bitcoin, I was like, a bit nervous. But in the UK, retail are banned from any form of crypto or Bitcoin ETF, ETN, or any exchange traded product on the market. There was a time where the FCA the Financial Conduct Authority, we did have access to ETFs, ETNs, but they banned them in around January of 2021. They were saying there's high risk, market volatility, abuse in the market, inadequate understanding of from retail on Bitcoin and crypto. So there was no exposure to Bitcoin unless you could buy spot on Coinbase or any exchange. But obviously, we know how difficult it is relatively for the layman to buy it and hold it and custody it correctly. So everyone then has access, or like my pension, for example, is sitting in the NASDAQ 100 or Tesla or whatever it is. And then MicroStrategy comes along and you're like, why not? Don't know. Could just fail, but this guy likes Bitcoin. So do I. Put it all in. So that was pretty much the trend, that anyone that was in the UK did it. And now I know of hundreds of billions of pounds sitting in these ISAs and SIPs that are sitting in MicroStrategy. So obviously it's done like a 3,000% return and it's been incredible. And then like every week I get a message from Hargreaves Lansdown, who are the UK's biggest broker. I think there's £1 trillion of assets sitting in SIPs. So SIPs are a pension that you can control yourself. And then ISAs are, I don't know what they stand for, but that's, again, your own investment pot. And so there's £1 trillion sitting in there. They've all moved to MicroStrategy because that's the only real Bitcoin exposure you can get. And every week on Hargreaves Lansdown, you can see MicroStrategy was the most purchased stock, like continuously, just outperforms Nvidia, outperforms everything. So the UK retail market is starved for growth, similar to Japan. And then a few years later, so in January of this year, I joined Coincilium as an advisor, who are also listed on Hargreaves Lansdown, but they're on the Aquis market. So you've got the LSE, the London Stock Exchange, which is the main market. You then have AIM and then the Aquis market. So there are now a couple of UK Treasury companies that have done it, and we're seeing huge volume. Like Aquis is known for no liquidity, no volume, and Coincilium has pretty much broken trading volume records. So it's been amazing to see. So we're now starting to see, because MicroStrategy is at a point, an inflection point where it's kind of stagnated, and we can go into why it's stagnated, but we're now seeing rotation from MicroStrategy into the smaller cap stocks that are now having Bitcoin exposure, because retail still can't get access to an ETF. So even if BlackRock wanted to list an ETF in the UK, they can't. There is a nuance if you are an accredited investor. So like you have a certain amount of assets under management, you earn a certain wage, I think you do a certain amount of trades a year, you do get deemed as an accredited investor, therefore you could buy an ETF. But for retail, which is 95% of the population in the UK, can't. So now we're seeing all of this rotation coming into Coincilium. And it just shows the level of incompetence. And I say incompetence and corruption are very blurred lines with these regulated entities. And if they just allowed for an ETF accredited by a BlackRock or a Fidelity, you wouldn't have any of these so-called huge multiple premiums to MNAVs, anything like that. But the FCA don't really understand Bitcoin, crypto. They don't understand the ecosystem. And it should get to a point where they're like, we need to hire experts. But when you look at the FCA's salary job descriptions, they're like £40,000, £50,000. And the cost of living crisis in the UK is insane. £40,000, £50,000 can't get you very far. So you're not going to hire very good people. And it's that perpetual doom loop that you're just hiring really bad people that are going to make really bad decisions that make the inefficiencies in the market. And it's just a circle, and it's just a doom loop. So we found an arbitrage in the market, which works to our benefit. But you would like to see the UK really take on growth within the Bitcoin ecosystem.
It's fascinating to see because they're trying to ban Bitcoin ETFs in the UK, the only thing they're doing, they are not stopping it. They're just driving the innovation outside. So then the UK people are buying an American company strategy. It's a fascinating example.
Yes. So the nuance as well to this is, again, as a UK investor, I can't buy US ETFs. So I can't buy BlackRock, ETF, IBIT, or Fidelity's FBTC. So yeah, all the money has to go offshore to US companies. It's insane. So again, Hargreaves Lansdown, you can see the top purchase stocks. They're all Nvidia, Tesla, any of the Magnificent Seven. It's just no one's buying UK companies. So we're starved for growth in our UK equities market. I think the FTSE 100 since 2008 has appreciated 20%. But now we're speaking to the brokers who are brokering our fundraising. So in the past, we did our first raise, and we're a small market cap. We're about £15 million. We've raised £5 million circa over the past 2 weeks. And the brokers have said this is the most amount of like exuberance they've seen in the market since 2008. So the brokers are delighted. And it shows that there is a huge demand for Bitcoin. And raising money is relatively easy as a Bitcoin treasury company. But again, you have the nuances with the flywheel effect where Metaplanet essentially are almost a 24-hour investment cycle. They can raise 0% ordinary bonds in debt, and then they can go and buy Bitcoin. We have the nuances within the UK market that we have to navigate as well. So it's not as easy to raise money as opposed to the US market. The US market has a plethora of options, such as convertible debt, the ATM, share sales that you can sell shares into the market. The UK has that, but you're also unknown on the demand side of if you listed a bond, for example. So the UK market in terms of finances used to be the capital market for the world. Really understanding the UK market, it has deteriorated, and it is so hard to get that flywheel effect. But you can only do the best you can with the tools you have. And yeah, it's amazing. You see what the NASDAQ listed companies do in the US and the volume and the market caps that they can get to. Something you aspire to, you could potentially cross list. So yeah, we're very early in the journey, but I've said that the UK is an election cycle behind the US. So we have 4 years. So we're essentially 2020-ish kind of where the US were. So that's our arbitrage, and that's our momentum that we can pick up.
So wait, there's now just like one company that is publicly traded in the UK that has Bitcoin?
There's 6, but the market cap, I think, combined with the 6 is 300 million. Like it's tiny.
So not even half was what was strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them are only putting on Bitcoin on their balance sheet because it gives you that volume and liquidity, and that gets people to notice you. We've seen that with multiple American companies. So look, people are going to do a Bitcoin treasury as just shove it as a PR announcement. Hopefully it'll get our stock price up, get a bit of liquid trading going on, but then the market will see through it. So it's that consistent buyer, that consistent market signal to the market saying we're here, we're buyers every week, month, 2 months. And the market is smart enough, and it will understand who is a real player and who's not.
Yeah, it's also like when you see Similar Scientific, when you see Metaplanet, when you see Strategy, they are not only just buying, they are buying a good amount, and they're going to the Bitcoin conferences. They're really also interacting with the community. They're doing more than just like, hey, like posting a tweet, hey, we're buying Bitcoin now. We're a Bitcoin company now. Come to us, trade with us.
Yeah.
So doing a lot more than just like a small action.
And that takes time. I think that's a position that, as Coincilium, or not speaking on behalf of Coincilium, but from my view, that's probably somewhere that we want to get to down the road. But we're 2 weeks into our strategy, so it takes time. And look, we've got the experience and the capabilities of understanding the market really well. They were the first ever blockchain company to IPO in the world globally. They've had Bitcoin on the balance sheet since 2015. So they've survived 3 bear markets, which was one of the reasons I joined them, because I really believed in, they understood hedging downside risk. They knew how to, when a bear market eventually comes in the next cycle, they'll know how to manage it. So that gave me a lot of assurances. But yeah, it's one thing just buying, and then it's the next thing is creating the awareness and really honing in on your strategy.
You said UK is kind of 4 years, like a 1 4-year cycle behind of the election cycle behind the US. Is that generally or directionally also true for whole of Europe?
Well, there was actually an article today. So Jacoby, they're a Bitcoin ETF. They just got access to the retail market for Europe. They hold a small amount of AUM, but we're starting to see small breakthroughs within Europe. Again, yeah, Europe is the continent known for red tape and legal barriers and lawyers, and everything's very bureaucratic and slow. And it's very similar to the UK. So yeah, I think the UK and Europe are probably very close in how underexposed they are to Bitcoin. But what gives me hope is that you look at all the other investment classes or asset classes out there, and they're all performing terribly. Like real estate in the UK, which pretty much underpins the economy, on a real terms basis, is definitely down about 15-20% from the top. Nominal, it's also down. As I said, UK equities haven't performed for 20-25 years. So people and bonds are as bad as anything. A gilt crisis is on the horizon. So everyone is now questioning where to put their money. You can't leave it really in cash anymore because inflation's compounding at 15-20% a year. So gold is capital gains tax free in this country. It is considered money in this country. So a lot of it will go into gold, but I do expect Bitcoin becoming this mature, institutionalized, financialized asset now. We will see 1 to 3 to 5% of that money that should have gone into gold go into Bitcoin. And yeah, it's only around 78,000-80,000 pounds for one Bitcoin. So we're not even at 6 figures yet because the pound's quite strong relatively. So again, the room for growth in this country is huge for price appreciation.
It's super interesting to see the institutional adoption of Bitcoin. I talked to 3 different German-speaking Bitcoin exchanges, Bitcoin-only exchanges, and they all have a company side of things, so like for retail, but also for B2B, for companies wanting to buy Bitcoin, private companies in that sense. And when I talk to them and their lists of like how many companies there are out there that really want to buy Bitcoin and they're buying Bitcoin, and about half of them, or sometimes like more than half of them, have a policy of like, hey, you cannot tell anyone. We don't want anyone to know that we even have Bitcoin. We just think Bitcoin is a great asset, but we don't want to talk about it publicly. Do you see that also sometimes in the market in the UK, and what you're seeing of like a lot of companies want to do it, but like they're afraid of what might happen when they are outspoken about it?
Yeah, so I know multiple private limited companies that have thousands of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They don't want to go public because they don't want to be known. I was at the MicroStrategy conference in April, May. 3 CEOs came up to me, said they had literally about 1,500 to 2,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheets, but they don't want to go public. They didn't know what to do with it. How can they capitalize on that, on having such a robust balance sheet? So yeah, there is an issue of being public with Bitcoin. It's not always a great thing. So yeah, it has its advantages and disadvantages. But I think once the people can see with these we're seeing a lot of SPACs. We're seeing a lot of reverse takeovers on the NASDAQ. I think we need to see a lot of success with them, not just pump and dumps. So if we can see these companies be successful as Bitcoin treasury companies, then I think a lot more people will go public. But we're still very early on. The Bitcoin Treasuries website is great because you can track all these public companies, and it's growing at like 5-10 public companies pretty much a week. I think it was over 120 as of today. And it's grown like 30 companies in the past month, and you keep that number going. So I think Seyr wanted like in the next 12 months, like 500 or something. And I think that's quite possible. The higher the price goes. So yeah, it's definitely a trend that has just started.
What do you think they are fearing? Like, what is holding them back to not announce it?
You don't want to come in, buy the top, and then the price drops 30%. Like, you want to come in, buy at 76 in April, announce you've bought 76, and the price is at 110, and you're up 30-40% from the bottoms. So that's what's ideal, because everyone's got an ego. But again, like I study the price every day. There is no way to time this market. Like, you can get in to an extent, and you can get in when you can feel there's real capitulation in the market, but that may not come for a while. So sometimes you just have to take your medicine and just be like, I'm coming in, I'm buying it at this price. We're going to be consistent buyers, and if you hold for a minimum of 4 years, you'll be up. So I think people need to have a long-term time frame. But once you have shareholders in your company, it becomes a lot harder. If you don't perform straight away, people will just disappear and rotate into other treasury companies.
I'm curious on what you think about that, because ever since I'm in Bitcoin since 2020, I always felt there is from the people that are into Bitcoin, but maybe they have a CFO position even in the company, or they have some position in the company where they could influence things like that. They always had that risk of the career. There's like, okay, if I'm a CFO and then I'm adopting Bitcoin, what if I pick a wrong time and 1 year is performing bad? I'm getting kicked out. I feel slowly that career risk kind of disappearing, or like maybe even like flipping to from flipping. I think we are like some years away from it, but the career risk is slowly disappearing, where it's more and more acceptable, because there are a lot of examples like Strategy and other companies that have done it, and they're like, oh, like it works obviously if you do it right. And this is just like my thing of like, once we have enough good examples of that, this career risk will completely disappear. Maybe even flip to the other side of like, why don't you have a Bitcoin strategy? And this will be like the full accelerator of institutional adoption.
Yeah, and I think that we're still very, very far off it. We're talking about a handful of companies adopting a strategy properly, not just announcing, like taking on the full strategy. We're probably still, I would expect it maybe in the next cycle. I think this is the iteration, the second iteration of it. But it's great to see globally. Everyone's waking up to this. But yeah, I do believe the career risk is starting. So I've had accountancy firms in the UK reach out to me asking me if they wanted to do our accountancy numbers, and these are traditional companies within London who would never touch crypto in a million years. So they're looking at it now. Even back in 2021, when I used to work for a toy manufacturer on the S&P 500, Hasbro, and the day I left, because I went into Bitcoin after that, I said the day I left, their share price was at $100. They had about, I think, a couple of 100 million, maybe $1 billion worth of cash on the balance sheet. I was like, you should buy some Bitcoin and put it on the balance sheet. And the UK CEO told me, you should just stop wasting my time. And he actually told me to leave early because he thought I was actually on purposely wasting his time. The share price is now $50. at Hasbro. So, and that's what 4 years later. So, I think the smaller companies, especially the zombie companies that MicroStrategy have alluded to, or Semler Scientific have alluded to, they're the ones that need it. Because if you're not in the S&P 500, if you're not a Magnificent Seven company, you are not going to get a look in anywhere. So yeah, like again, I only heard of MicroStrategy in the 2000 tech bust. So without Bitcoin, you wouldn't get noticed. So yeah, you'll find some charlatans in this space that will just say, I'm part of Bitcoin and blah, blah. But long enough time frame, the market will wash them away. So I do believe that the smart people do see a career risk. Larry Fink, he completely sidestepped. He was calling it a Ponzi scheme and everything under the sun. He launched an ETF. He's now one of our biggest advocates. And the next one to flip will be Jamie Dimon. And you can see how over time he has changed his tune to an extent. His latest comments were, I'll let my client, JP Morgan will offer Bitcoin custody services or whatever it is to it, because he has to, because his clients are demanding it. But he's still like, it's still a Ponzi scheme. So until JP Morgan needs it existentially, he'll still say no.
It's fascinating to see the narrative changing. I mean, Seyr himself was once against Bitcoin. I mean, not really big, but he made some tweets. Larry Fink is probably like a better example where he really also outspoken in TVs. And Jamie Dimon would be a big one. Like if Jamie Dimon comes out and says good stuff about Bitcoin, like Larry Fink is now saying, and those things. But yeah, we kind of see the media narrative really changing now.
Yeah, and it's also traditional media that, again, in the UK, no one trusts the BBC. The Financial Times are a joke. I don't know if you saw that interview with that woman and Michael Saylor when she goes to him, but my teeth are scarce. Like these organizations aren't really serious anymore, and the power of Twitter and the power of like your podcast is you can just do it and put it online and anyone can see it. No one's telling you what to do, or you don't need a degree. You don't need to be told, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. Bitcoin just breaks all the barriers down. So the trust within the institutional media side is completely dead. And it allows your podcast and other podcasts and other media services just to rise, and it allows the individual to choose what they want, not to be force-fed to the BBC or other institutions.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from CoinVigilante represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing CoinVigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. Most people realize that way too late. If you have Bitcoin, you have to have a self-custody hardware wallet. But what are you doing if that hardware wallet breaks? Yeah, you wrote your seed phrase on paper. What if that paper is just dissolving or water is spilled on top of it? Paper is very non-durable. So you have to have a fire resistant, water resistant, and impact proof method of securing your seed phrase so you can back up your keys. And to do that, you should use a solid titanium plate from Stampseed. Go to stampseed.com and use code Robin to get not 5 or 10, but 15% off your Stampseed. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. It's so funny because mainstream media is saying exactly the opposite of like those internet medias, podcasts, Twitter is spreading the fake news. And they should trust them because it's like they are the established ones and they are the truthful. And like, no, actually, like if you look at the facts, you're spreading a lot of fake news. Maybe not intentionally, but like you definitely do. You can look at past examples. And yeah, of course, there's a lot of fake news on the internet. Like it's an open protocol. Of course, there will be dumb shit and good shit on there. But yeah, I think facts are spreading faster and faster than ever. And it's a really good time to be alive because you don't need anything, and you can just inform yourself on the first source, on the primary source. You don't have to go to the secondary or third source. You can really look at the one video. Like I loved the I think it was also about the UK actually, JD Vance's speech in Germany where he talked about the UK and the freedom of speech. And I heard just on mainstream media how they were talking about it, and I was like, he went in there and dumped all over Europe. And then I actually was like, oh, I should listen to the actual speech. The actual speech was actually kind of harmless. Like he did not say anything bad. He just like said like 1-2 examples that actually happened. And so primary sources and individual journalism, podcasting, whatever you want to call it, is really, I think, really good for the world.
Yeah, it is. And people are, if you speak out on social media in the UK, people have been put in prison for going against the UK establishment. But I think what we're going to see in these next 4 years, reforms supposedly are getting all the love and attention at the moment. That's led by Nigel Farage. I'm very skeptical on any UK politician, so I'll have to believe it when I see it. But again, a bit like the Democrats that have completely died, the Conservative Party in the UK have died, and the Labour Party will be completely irrelevant within the next 4 years. So it kind of is what is going to be left of the UK in 4 years' time, God only knows. But yeah, kind of you're looking at reform being like, you guys can't really mess this up at this point. So yeah, it's there was a stat that China are the number one surveillance state in the world. The second is the UK.
It's not something you want to be compared to.
No, and a lot of debanking has been going on in the UK. Nigel Farage, again, he's been debanked, so he's obviously an advocate for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So I think the more totalitarian the country gets, because they can't allow wealth to escape, but even though we've got the most millionaires leaving, we've got the non-doms leaving because they're putting taxes up too much, and you've got the Laffer curve, which implies you put taxes up too much. It actually regresses GDP. And they put up capital gains tax, which is actually seeing less income going to the Treasury. So all these idiotic policies that they're doing are going to make the issues and situations worse in the UK, more money leaving the country. So again, why they don't like Bitcoin is Bitcoin, I can get up and just leave. Where if I had a property, property is kind of a capital control. It allows money to stay within the country, within the borders. Bitcoin's completely the opposite. They can't obviously regulate it, can't control it. So I think positioning ourselves now in the UK as a Bitcoin treasury. Having a Bitcoin treasury really will give you huge amounts of growth over this next 4 years.
How do you look at Nigel Farage? I saw him at the Bitcoin conference speaking, and I've like zero to no clue about UK policies. So I know the name, but I don't really know for what he's standing for and what his stance also on Bitcoin is.
So I've met him a couple of times. He's very, look, to me, he's very intelligent and he's a great speaker. Does that mean I believe every word he says? No. But yeah, he says a lot of, he says everything that you want to hear, but we all know the situation. A bit like Trump, like he'll tell you everything you want to hear, but when you actually get into it, like the Republicans got a majority, and look how hard it is for him to get his policies across. So like even if Farage says we'll do this, this, and this, like actually when you're in the hot seat, there is nothing you can do. We saw that with Liz Truss in 2022. She tried to get her policies across, and the bond market ate her up. There was literally a coup on Liz Truss, chucked her out. So I don't really know what you can do. You have to kind of restructure the government, which becomes almost impossible. So it doesn't. I don't think it really much matters who's in charge or what policies they have, because you're kind of pulling on the same strings, or you're throwing a bit of money here instead of there. It's the same. It's the same fiat Ponzi issue. You've got to continue to spend. So yeah.
It's also the question of how much does it matter if you're a Bitcoiner and you are way more movable than any other one with any other property. You can, if really shit hits the fan in your country, obviously you don't want to leave your family and all of those things, but at least with Bitcoin, you have the possibility to actually go ahead and just go.
Yeah, it gives you full optionality, which is so important in today's world. And there's no way that you could seriously buy a property and get into £500,000 worth of debt and struggle to pay that off the rest of your life. The taxes will go up. So yeah, you really have to think about what I actually want now, because in 4 years' time, you may not even really get a choice. So Bitcoin gives you that full optionality and freedom. And you're essentially voting with Bitcoin, which is so important. So yeah, I haven't really. I don't even think I voted in the previous elections. I don't really have an interest until someone conclusively comes out and is pro Bitcoin. Still haven't seen that with reform, but that could change.
Yeah, one cycle behind in America was also hard to see like 2-3 years ago, and now it's like, oh shit, like they're really positive now on Bitcoin and crypto, and maybe we see 2028 two candidates in the American election, they fight who is the real Bitcoiner. Like that would be fun to see.
Yeah,
that would be a pace of change, definitely.
yeah, like who knows? But yeah, it's waiting and seeing at this point.
Absolutely. One more thing on institutional side, I think is interesting maybe for people to know. I don't know how much information or insights you have on that, but how does the custody for institutions look like for publicly traded company? Like obviously like there's not like one guy that holds the keys. Is it always with like some partner, like I think Coinbase in America a lot, or are there companies that actually hold the keys themselves? I don't know, like it's a multi-sig with like 12 people or something like that.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of Coincilium on how they custody. I'm only an advisor, but looking from the outside as just a general retail and seeing how MicroStrategy or the other public companies do it, they spread their coins across multiple custodians. So MicroStrategy have Coinbase, Prime, and Fidelity. So they try and spread the risk. We also have the discussion of proof of reserves. That Metaplanet do, that Strategy don't do. I don't believe the proof of reserves is as big a deal as people are making out. They are a publicly traded company. They are audited. They have to comply with the SEC. Michael Seyr is a billionaire. I don't see the risk of why he would try and play around with his coins. The upside is just not big enough if you know what I mean. Like, why would he try and manipulate or not be transparent? He's a public company, so I don't really see an issue with that.
Yeah, he would basically play with the SEC and commit fraud, and if that comes out, he goes in prison. If I'm informed correctly.
Yeah. So where's the upside in that? So no, it's a non-issue. Every company can do what they want, but as long as you're abiding by the jurisdiction that you are in, then that is absolutely fine. But we saw with Coinbase Prime recently that there was like a data breach, and people's data got leaked. So look, there are concerns. Coinbase hold, I think, 2 to 3 million Bitcoin. So it's a significant amount. So again, that's another centralized concern that all the ETF issuers, mainly BlackRock, hold it in Coinbase. So you have to start looking at all these centralized concerns. Do I trust Coinbase? I think on whole you have to, but also their activities over the past make them hard to trust with all their degenerate crypto meme coin and listings and everything like that. So yeah, it's you have to just take them for their word, which is not really the ethos of Bitcoin.
It was fun to see when Brian Armstrong, who sells a lot of shit coins on Coinbase, is going ahead and then informing the president, oh, it should be Bitcoin only, the strategic reserve, and he comes publicly out. How did you actually like the strategic Bitcoin reserve and how this kind of shaked out till now?
Well, it started not with a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It started with a strategic Bitcoin reserve and cryptocurrencies. And then I think it got walked back, and then it just became a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But the challenge is Trump doesn't want to put any more cost to the taxpayer. So they have to find it in a delta neutral, budget neutral way. And what, we're 4 or 5 months since that, and nothing's really happened. David Sachs alluded we're still looking for budget neutral ways, and it's like, if you haven't come up with ideas now, you probably aren't coming up with ideas. I think crypto seizures are probably the best idea to get some money in. But yeah, it's pretty concerning that after all these months, they haven't found a way to find a budget neutral strategy.
Interesting, yeah. It's also the Cynthia Lummis bill and all those things going on. It's almost like the states are maybe going on faster than the federal government. I'm really looking forward to how this things plays out with nations, because I personally I'm okay with nations not buying Bitcoin. So I want the individuals to have a longer chance to buying, even though they already had 16 years.
Yeah, the issue does become, where is this new money coming from to inflate the price higher? You just had a vice president talk about Bitcoin, or you had the president last year in his election campaign, and it's like you've got nation states potentially buying hash rates at an all-time high. So I know that the UAE are mining Bitcoin with their renewable energy, and like, you couldn't get more bullish news globally. I think Russia's biggest bank are doing a Bitcoin bond. So it's like, what else do you need for the price to go higher? The options market is alluding to a surge in June, July, but it doesn't look like it. The on-chain fees have just disappeared. No one's transacting in it. There looks to be a lack of use cases for Bitcoin. Not trying to sound like an absolute doomer, but without a narrative, it becomes hard to see the price start to escalate. MicroStrategy are trying to go through many different alternatives on their preferred stock. They just did Stride, which is their junk grade one. And at the moment, there's a lack of volatility in MicroStrategy. So that's why he can't issue any more ATM on his common stock. But it's interesting to see the lack of volatility for MicroStrategy is a bad thing. But the BlackRock ETF is also seeing a lack of volatility, but it's a good thing because institutional investors I can invest in that because it's not as volatile. But the MicroStrategy investors need the volatility. So you could also say it the other way, that we're over $100,000 for almost a month now. And retail are just nowhere to be seen. There's no euphoria. There's no greed. We're just consolidating. So I guess, yeah, look, there's no narrative per se at the moment, but I guess the bullish news is you're comfortably over 100,000, which would have been a dream whenever, 5-10 years ago.
That's a good point of like, you don't have any retail FOMO whatsoever, and we are just comfortable sitting over 100K, and it's very calm around Bitcoin. It's a good aspect, actually. I have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Well, I do a lot of data analysis and AI, mainly for Bitcoin, but no, it's understanding the markets, macro, and then, yeah, I spend a lot of time in AI doing data analysis and leveraging AI because I think AI is probably more important than Bitcoin. I think the fiat Ponzi scheme only works. When the internet came, it changed everything. And now with AI, I believe it changes everything because governments can't control AI. And if you use these tools on every given daily basis, like your learning just multiplies by 10x and you become more efficient, you become faster. It's just incredible to see it. So yeah, it's maybe my proficiency within the AI tools.
Interesting. How do you think AI can or will, if at all, impact Bitcoin?
Well, you've got quantum computing that's going to come, and Satoshi's keys become vulnerable. I think that becomes an existential threat to Bitcoin. I think they will be hacked. I don't think there's a way of Bitcoin's proof of work. So if you do the work and you break his keys through quantum, I think there's a valid reason saying that's fine because you've worked to do it. But then the other thing becomes how existential does it become for the earlier coins as well. So look, I don't know what the answer is to that, and it's probably a discussion that's needed. But that becomes the obvious threat within the next 4 to 6 years, I reckon.
Interesting, yeah. I think it's something that gets talked about, but probably not a lot on like podcasts and like on like public spaces. It's more like more like experts talking.
Yeah, because no one wants to talk about it because it's an existential threat. So yeah, that's my main concern. And I would like more people talking about it.
Yeah, very important. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asks you the question, what tools do Bitcoiners need to educate the next class of Bitcoiners?
Tools. I would go on the MicroStrategy dashboard. It's not per se for Bitcoiners, more it's to educate Bitcoiners within the financial markets. As much as Bitcoiners don't want to be partaking in financial markets, Bitcoin's now a financialized asset. So going on the MicroStrategy dashboard, looking at how the share price moves, or understanding all his preferred stock or his convertible notes and understanding how they will operate, I think is really important.
Really, really cool. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with it's interesting all the data that they're delivering to us. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on X, Twitter, on BTCJVS, and I also write articles on CoinDesk.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.